What are you doing today?
Not much, really.
Can you go to the airport and pick up my friend?
I guess. Well, thank you for planning the whole day for me. How am I going to find time for myself? Who impacts planning your day most? Is it yourself or somebody else? My name is Mike.
It's Ewan.
Welcome to the Imperfect Clinician. Today, we are talking about setting agenda. Agenda in the context of schedule, I guess, or a plan. And the inspiration for it was where you brought up the quote by Melinda Gates. If you don't set your own agenda, somebody else will. And if I didn't fill my schedule with things I felt were important, other people would fill my schedule with things they felt were important. What do you think about setting agenda?
There are two perspectives of it, but from a work perspective, that is definitely true. If I don't set my day accordingly, or even my week, what I find is how I plan the day becomes more reactive than proactive. And that might make me feel a little bit less in control. Whereas if I start the week or even the month thinking, right, this is what I would like to do, to plan, to schedule in, I start with proactively blocking time out for those, whether it's meeting, whether it's conversation, and then also leaving time for reactive things, because it might be that people need me to be responsive to a certain issue, for example. And so I think when I start with the approach where I am being more proactive, I feel at the end of the day or at the end of the week more fulfilled. And I don't feel like I'm being driven around by other people's need.
Okay, so how do you do it? What do you need to set up a successful schedule, a successful plan, either for the day or for the week?
So I'll break it. In my case, my day to day is very different because of my different roles. And so I would schedule my week according to things that are not going to change. For example, my partner sessions in the practice, those are set days or set sessions. So those wouldn't change. So those will be set aside. But the sessions for my clinical director role, or the sessions about leading the team or the pharmacy team, for example, usually when I am looking at doing that, it's either having conversation, supervision, checking in. Sometimes my work in the EDI world, equality, diversity and inclusion world, requires me to have a bit more planning, thinking space, conversation. So I tend to have a to-do list based on different areas and based on different priorities. And then I look at it and adjust my work week based on what I would like to achieve, or mainly how I want to feel after that week.
Okay, so why do you plan? Do you plan to do more or to be more fulfilled?
Why do I plan? I plan because I want to get certain things done. Or maybe instead of done, let's say if I have a infinite mindset of I want the team to be better instead of a goal where we're going to get to point X, how do we do that? How do I do that? If I want to improve the system in the practice, where do I start? Who do I speak to? And how can I get there? And so the how, in terms of the group of people that I need to speak to, might change. And it might be that my approach will need to change depending on who I'm speaking to. However, if I then set up a system where I regularly focus on improving the system, improving people, making sure people are listened to, then my aspiration would not be just purely aspiration. It will be something that I'm working towards.
Okay, so it's to get things done, essentially, and to have the satisfaction of getting it done? Or is it efficiency?
So I think there will be some level of efficiency, yes. But I think getting things done felt like a very finite mindset to me. Like we will just get to this point and then we're going to get to the next point. For me, it's more about what is my vision for each of those roles and how can I improve my system. That means my day to day, my week, how do I break it down to get to what I aspire to be?
So, would you be able to tell me how do you allocate time for certain activities? Is it you base it on experience or whether you're trying to fit it right? I'm going to aim to do this because I have got a gap between the meetings. And what do you prefer and how do you go about that?
I think for me, it's a lot of trial and error. Sometimes I feel that I need to meet with the team quite frequently. But then sometimes I go, am I having meeting for meeting's sake? What is more conducive? Not just from my perspective, but listening to the team members as well. And so there isn't going to be a one size fit all. For certain people, when they are doing one thing, they can only do that thing. Whereas for certain people, they're quite happy doing one thing, have their email open, and then reply to a pinging message where it's just a simple sentence. And for some people, having that fleeting approach works for them. It's just how different people's brain works. So,
Which camp are you in? Are you in the one that does many things at the same time?
I wouldn't say many things, but I am somebody who can, if I'm typing something up, I can speak to somebody and then touch type. And so sometimes it baffles my colleagues.
Okay, so now what is the level of flexibility in how you organize your schedule? Do you need to have everything, you know, buttoned up to the very last minute, or how much flexibility do you agree in it?
Again, it all comes down to you, not just from a work perspective, but also how frequently you reflect and how frequently you check in internally. And I think having some time where you schedule thinking time is quite important. And sometimes for me, there are so many things to remember, and sometimes I miss one or two. And those things then come back to me when I'm meditating at night and it just appears in my head.
Just to unload it for no sleepless nights.
Yeah, of course. And I think if it's one after another, now virtual meetings are very common. And so if it's scheduled after scheduled after scheduled, what I've noticed in myself and in others is sometimes when you in a meeting and then you move on to a meeting straight away without any breaks and sometimes even no toilet break, is you bring the emotion from one meeting to another. And so in the second meeting, people will think, oh, why are you reacting this way? Because the first meeting was really hard, but
Yeah,
you've not
because you're
had a chance.
preloaded.
Yeah,
Mm.
but you've not had a chance to, I don't know, just stand up and stretch or go and have a drink or go and have a wee.
Yeah, back-to-back meetings are quite taxing.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a hybrid of back-to-back meeting and face-to-face meeting. But when that is arranged, there is no driving time or lunchtime scheduled in those. And so I sometimes hear of people driving from one place to another, eating while they're in a car. That happened to me before. Not very frequently,
Yeah, but you
thankfully.
see, that's the thing. We're talking about others setting your agenda. You can't control everything because there are a lot of people that often have to get together. Do you then allow all the meetings as they come along? Do you pick and mix? Do you try to attend as many as you can? How do you prioritize, I guess? Because scheduling your agenda, it's all about realizing that you can't do everything,
Hmm.
at least for me. And then you start to either prioritize more important things or reject things that are not adding to your, I don't know, performance your purpose, whatever,
I agree.
Are you more rejecting or are you more accepting?
I would say a beginner version of me, so you in 1.0, was somebody who wanted to prove her worth, have fear of losing out, and would try to say yes to as many things as possible because what if this is really important? What if? What if? What if? I am now at a stage where I am prioritizing and saying no to things. But in order to get to you in 1.0 to you in 2.0 and then also work in progress, I needed to find out why I feel the need to prove myself. Why do I feel that I have to put 110% every day and then by the end of the week I'm flat out?
Yeah, and here's what I think might be a light that sort of shines on that in that respect, that if I plan or whatever I, schedule into my world, into my life, realigns with the purpose rather than with other people, then it fulfills my personal agenda better.
Mm,
Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
if you just accept every single invitation just to prove yourself, and I think you have to go through this stage because this allows you to understand where the priorities are. And it's like a baptism of fire. You have to prove yourself to others, but I think more important to yourself. And also to understand what things matter to you and what realigns with your purpose. Or if you're still trying to work out what your purpose is.
And I think there are two parts of the picture as well. One, agree, like you said, we need to understand where us as individual need to work on our why and building the confidence to set boundaries. But also there is a systemic side of things. So from an organizational perspective, what is in place, first of all, to allow people to feel safe to talk about it when they're overworked. Second of all, what system is in place to mitigate that? Because it can be a place that has none of that. So a person's overworked, don't have anywhere to go to, and then burn out and then leave. Or they have some place to go to, but doesn't really make a lot of difference. So I guess the road to burnout would be a little bit slower because you're able to talk about it, being empathize. I think when you have 1 and 2, where you have the space for people to talk about it and also approach it, empower the individual and the team and the whole system to say, what can we do differently? What can be taken away or done more efficiently or delegated? Or in some cases, how does the workflow even work?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You organize the work of other people as well. And we all at some stage have got our work organized for us by others because, there is a meeting coming along or something,
Yeah, and people need
important.
something
People
from
need,
you.
need something from you. So it is quite striking trying to find the balance and to find time to fit them around your purpose because there are certain things that you can't avoid. Okay. Sometimes you might be not in the right frame of mind, but you still have to go to the meeting. You still have to do something. You might not be fully rested from, like you said, you going into the meeting with your head full of the previous meeting. Yeah. And how do you find time to regenerate, I guess, at least, I don't know, your mood, your feeling about the situation, or how do you look after yourself in this?
So before answering that question, I want to give a bit of example of what we discussed just before that. Hopefully people can relate to this quite well. Usually when you have things arranged for us, that other person might, or some of the time, holds more power or influence than you. So I'll give you an example. For example, person A is a junior person and a manager wants person A to do more. And this junior person has got a senior. So when the manager says do more, junior person, if they're new, for example, if they don't feel confident, they don't feel safe, might find it very hard to say no to the manager. Whereas if the senior person then has a good relationship with the junior, understands what's happening, understand the workflow, when the manager then asks that question, the senior can almost be there to bat it back whilst working with the junior on the confident side of things.
So here, incorporating something very important that we discussed in the past, the culture in the team.
Exactly.
And the health of the team. Also, one of our episodes, we were talking about that as well. So it all matters on how the organization is structured and where does the boss's ego ends
Or
to,
lack of
to allow
understanding.
space or lack of understanding. Yeah, everybody has got their own agenda to fulfill. And some people's agenda is to turn up at work and finish at 5.
Mm-hmm.
So we just have to make sure that we increase that productivity drive through, for example, looking at purpose, for example.
Yeah, and so your question that I haven't had a chance to answer yet, how do you take care of yourself? So I think this is really important for both the senior and junior person, even more so the senior person who's going to be batting that off. Because if they both have same level of power, same level of influence, that might be a little bit easier. But if it's not, it can feel like you are pushing back, and that can feel quite scary for people, especially if it's not something that they're used to doing. And even if it's something that you're used to doing, you might not enjoy it very much. And so when that happens, the reflection, almost the how do I feel after having this conversation? And how did I take it? And did I take that personally? Should I take that personally? Why did I take that personally? All of that inner chatter really need to have a space to decompress. Usually after the day's ended or the week's ended. But what I'm trying to say is we need to allocate some time for that. So when we talk about agenda, that needs to be included as well.
And I guess it works for different people differently as well, because some people would like to talk things through with others,
Mm-hmm.
even with their partners, back at home,
Yep.
parents, whoever, children.
Any of their peers that they can trust.
Or do it on their own.
Yep.
Yeah. So I must say that I'm quite a big admirer of how you organize your work. And I noticed that you are much more suited to multitasking in a work environment than probably at home. Is that fair?
Yes. I think maybe because of the things that I need to focus on.
Or is it your way of decompressing? So, if you're
Okay,
with
maybe.
kids, you're with kids. And that's it.
Yeah. And maybe that work setting that I enjoy, after doing it after a set amount of time, I feel the need to decompress. But usually, just to give the listener a bit of context, usually when we're both home with the kids, what happens is I will play with the kids and I'm their emotional, what do you call it? Like filling up their emotional jug. And then might will try to do everything else, like
As well
cooking
as play.
and I think we approach that emotional jug differently. For me, I'm then 110% in. I might be playing with them, gurgling like a baby because somebody else wants to be a mum, for example. But I think that is my way of just being, and that for me is quite relaxing.
Is this your unscheduled time in the scheduled world? Because, you have got this time. Okay, let's say it's when you finish work till the kids go to sleep. So it is kind of scheduled.
I had so yeah, you're right. It's a scheduled way for me as well, where I think from this time to this time, this is where I am with them and I'm present.
Scheduled free flow.
Yeah. Where I am with them and my goal is being present. So my phone is aside and I play with them, whatever they need. Sometimes they don't need anything from me. They just want to sit on my lap and cuddle.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I just sink into that instead of thinking, oh, I need to help you in the kitchen.
Well, we fulfill the things that need to be done, and the time that we spend with the kids one way or another that it sort of works. Like, lots and lots of parents, we all have things to do, and we all have got our obligations towards the children as well. We want to spend time with them. We don't want them to just, you know, do things on their own, because first of all, they wouldn't let us. Second of all, it's fun to spend time with them. I enjoy it. I think it's very rejuvenating, and it also allows you to step away from anything else that needs doing in a world that you fix in the world at work or wherever.
Plus, they're at the age now where they really want us to play with them, and that doesn't last long, like you said before.
Exactly. Let's use it. I want to use it as long as I can, because soon they'll be in the bedrooms on the phones or whatever devices there's going to be available in the next few years, probably.
And think what parents says are not important because their friends said otherwise.
I must say that I have never been very good at, not very good, but I have never paid a lot of attention to planning and scheduling. Okay.
Your day, your week?
Yeah, my day, week, because I don't know, was it a question of, being disappointed of not getting things done, that you put a lot of things, all right, I have to do this, that, and the other. And then I don't do half of it. And then you say, well, actually, that day I didn't achieve enough to keep me going.
But I think you do schedule.
I do now. Yes, absolutely.
So
yeah.
Okay.
Because it was for me, and also the nature of my days, that was many years ago when I sort of was stepping into adult life, were quite difficult to predict, and I had to adapt on the fly. So my first motto was, planning is a complete waste of time.
Yeah, because you've seen how it doesn't work.
Because you spend time planning, and you might have as well done something else during that time when you spent planning. Okay. And then there's also one more thing. I realized that when you're younger and when you have got less awareness, I'm not saying younger in age, but when you have less awareness about things around you, you accomplish more things because you don't even think about them.
Mm-hmm.
They just get done. Okay. And then when you remember it many years onwards, you say, how did I manage, to be stuck in traffic, get this done, drop that off, pick that up, write whatever you needed to write, read whatever you needed to read. And then now I say, this is impossible for me to do it without having a plan. I know that the activities have changed because of children, family life, and everything else. But I think that too much awareness of the things make you less consciously in control. You have greater awareness of the world around you and of the things that need doing, but you tend to pick and mix the things that are most important. Like, I remember for a while, after some sort of leadership trainings, that was, again, quite a while ago, you have those 4 areas of things that are important and need to be done now, things that are not important and need to be done, things that are not important and they don't have to be done now, and those that are important but don't have to be done now. And I tried to, for a while, to get into a swing of trying to put the order into the things. So you sort of try to organize them in a bit more systemic or systematic order. Okay. And the first thing that I started doing is the things that are not important and not urgent, I just stopped doing them because they were just not necessary ultimately. Yeah. And, but there is one thing that you have to understand, that very often the urgency changes and the importance changes as well.
Of course.
So you have to be able to reassess it quite well. But even like when we were talking before about scheduling my biking or exercising, or if you plan it, you have much greater chance of fulfilling it because your brain is getting ready for things that are planned. And this is coming from a person that's always been quite spontaneous when it comes to doing things.
Extremely. Just to give a bit of context for those listeners who haven't heard about the episode, tell them a little bit more about the biking that you've mentioned.
Well, yeah, when I started going back to biking after many years, I was essentially, finding time here and there to try to go for half an hour or an hour for a bike. But this was the least important thing. It was on the bottom of the importance when it comes to all the other activities, because you're trying to squeeze it in between spending time with the kids, between cooking, I don't know, shopping. Everything else was essentially more important, so it didn't happen. So when we started to schedule it in, let's say, right, every Saturday or Sunday morning, I go for a bike. Family is aware, the kids are aware, you are aware. And this actually started to happen for me, that I had this time, secured and protected time for exercise, for biking, for going on a bike.
And I think that also comes from an element of you are putting everyone's priority above yourself.
I just see how many things need doing.
Yes. And so that happens to a lot of us, I'm sure. So saying to you, you need to put yourself first, is easily said, but
Yeah,
not
because
easily done.
it's not a natural state.
Yes. And that is the self-worth thing that we talked about previously. But also the second thing is, okay, you can say it, but then will it happen? What does it need to make it happen? What needs to change in the system as a family to make that happen? And so addressing the self-awareness and saying that's your health, that's really important. You feel differently, you act differently after consistent weekend bike ride, and that needs to continue. So how can we do that? And like you said, making the family aware, understanding that between this time and this time in the morning, that is either out biking or indoor biking. And with time, that becomes a norm. Sometimes we have a bit of a...
You have to have a level of flexibility, and
Yes, but
I'm
most
quite
of
good
the
with
time,
flexibility.
but looking at how much you were biking prior to a system that's been set up, that was a massive difference. And so I think both looking at how you prioritize yourself and your self-worth is important, and that needs to go with what system do you have in place for you to achieve those goals? What little steps, little changes that you make. It doesn't have to feel that those are massive changes. And the other thing I find also helps is how you view yourself. If you view yourself as an active, regular biker compared to, I just bike whenever. I think how you see yourself also changes how you take on setting up a new habit.
Okay, so to sum it up, you have to look out for how you talk to yourself and about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And also you have to set the systems in place in order for things to happen. It's not a guarantee, but it increases the chances of that actually happening,
Yes.
I think. And we're going back to James Clear's quote, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the levels of your systems. And that's quite striking. I think that in many areas of our life, whether it's professional or whether it's personal, making sure that we can find a system, that we work it out, because it's not something that you can just download from the internet, It's something that you have to live through to start realizing the things that benefit you and the things that realign with your purpose. I also think I'm a quite good example of a person that is a living proof that this can be done. For somebody who is really, I mean, don't get me wrong, I've always been very busy and getting a lot of things done. And I've also come across this, I don't remember whose quote or whether it was a quote or whether it was just a saying, but if you want somebody to do something for you, make sure that you ask somebody who is very, very busy, who does a lot of things,
Yep.
because those people will be able to fit that thing to help you inside their busy schedule, because they already are very good at scheduling. And it is a skill. And as a skill, we can get better at it by practicing it.
Another point I want to add is trial and error, because the system that I have 6 months ago, I have to amend it. So anytime there are any changes, anytime when I check in internally or mentally where I go, is it quite right for me? Is it quite right for the family? Is it quite right for work? It frustrates me sometimes, especially when I find a system that works and after a while it's like, oh, why is it not working again? That trial and error always allows you to improve the system that you have. And it might start off as not where you want it to be. Keep trying. It's a part of the journey.
Yeah, and I would not like to get to the point that I only rely on a schedule to get things done. I don't want to be the prisoner of that schedule, because I will suffocate and will absolutely just stop doing it. It has to be a balance for me, because I am quite good with getting things done in a more spontaneous way, or maybe thinking outside of the box on how to get things done, or maybe finding different way of sorting problems out, different to the others, different to what I've done before. So essentially, I just like trialing
So as you
the
can
ideas.
see, when we first met each other, he is somebody who does not like planning at all. And I'm someone who loves planning. And so I think we got to, like, via osmosis of moderation, I hope, but still retaining what we like to some extent. I hope you find that helpful. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much, and bye-bye. It's about time for You and Reads.
Welcome to You and Reads. Today, we are talking about the book by Michelle Obama, Becoming. When I started reading this book, it felt like I had a looking glass almost that allowed me to delve deep into her upbringing and how her everyday life impacts her future. It took me through her growing and formative years. It shows me how her and Barack met, how relationship can be challenging, how it can also blossom and grow. It also demonstrates to me the journey of her finding her own voice, whilst having the challenging quest to navigate through family and political life when Barack took office. It is a compelling memoir with honesty about difficulties of everyday life.
Thank you for listening to the Imperfect Clinician podcast.
Grow and learn with us using our experience and flaws, just like we'd learn every day about ourselves. The best way to support us is to hit that follow or subscribe button. Thanks for your participation in our socials. We take to heart the ratings, reviews, and comments.
The best way we can repay you is by making this podcast better and by reaching and inspiring more people like you, like us. Until next time.